homework was on the cosine rule, so I gave you 1 and 3, is that right?
Yeah.
Right. Does anyone need me to do any bit of number 1? Any bit of number 3? 3 part 1? Right, okay, 3 part 1. So 3 part 1, triangle 5, 6 and 8, and it said find angle A. How do I know I have to use the cosine rule, aside from the fact it's in the cosine rule section? But how would you know by looking at that in an exam question that immediately you have to use the cosine rule? Because, yeah, the 3 sides. When the 3 sides and nothing else, the 3 pieces of information are the 3 sides, that means you have to use the cosine rule. Okay, so I'm looking for a capital A. So I'll call this small a, I'll call this capital B, this is small b, and I'll call this capital C, and this is small c. So then in the log tables, a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cos A. Okay, so a squared, a is 6, so that's 6 to b squared is equal to 5 to b squared plus 8 to b squared. Now these numbers here, they're all multiplied. So it's minus 2 multiplied by b, which is 5, multiplied by c, which is 8, times cos of A. I don't have the angle A, so it's cos of A. So multiply out what you can. 6 squared 36, 5 squared 25, 8 squared 64. And here I can't multiply all the numbers because I'm missing the last bit, but multiply what you know. So 2 by 5 is 10, by 8 is 80, so that's minus 80 cos A. So then I'm looking for cos A, so I want that in its own on one side, everything else on the other side. So I'm going to bring that minus 80 cos A over, and it's going to become plus 80 cos A. And then I'm bringing all the numbers to the right hand side. So 25 is here already, 64 is here already, right, 36 comes over, becomes a minus 36. So 80 cos A, so I put those together. So 25 plus 64 is 79, take away is 89 even, take away 36, 53. Am I okay? Yeah? Then divide by 80, see the way there's an 80 stuck to the cos A. So divide each side by 80. So that means cos A is equal to 53 over 80. And this is when I'm missing the angle. How do I find out what the angle is? I do shift and cos, so I do shift, cos, and then I put 53 over 80. So it's the inverse cos, like the opposite to cos. So I do shift, cos, 53 over 80. How do you know to press the shift? Because you're missing the angle. When you're missing the angle, you press the shift first. Okay? And that will tell you what angle A is, and they said to round it up to the nearest whole number. Has anyone got an answer for me?
46.
Say that again?
46.
46.
49.
49 degrees. Is that right? Okay? Happy with that? Does anyone else need any other part of number 3 done? Okay? We're all okay. So they're the straightforward ones, right? Okay, so what we have to move on to now is I'm going to do one example of a where they attach a story, right? Okay, so when they put a story to it, just cut to the chase, get your right angle triangle, or get your triangle. It's obviously not right angled in this case. Get your triangle right, okay, and then I'm going to do example 2 is going to be a mixture of the cosine rule and the sine rule together. So example 1. Okay, so this for your notes. It's on page 548 and it's question 8. Okay, that's just for reference, right? Okay, when you're looking at your notes, okay? Right, but it tells me on a snooker ball, or on a snooker table even, right? So there's the snooker table. So this is the black ball. So on our snooker table, the cue ball, right, okay, is, so this is the cue ball here. The cue ball and the black ball are situated as shown, right, in the diagram. Find the distance the cue ball has to travel before hitting the black ball. And so then they told me other stuff as well. They told me the pocket, the side pocket is over here. And they told me this is 50 centimeters. And they told me this from here to here is 140 centimeters. And it told me this angle is 32. And they said, what is the distance between the cue ball and the black ball? And I'll just stick in the next there, that's okay. That's what I'm looking for. So they tell me a story about a snooker table. Cut to the chase, there's your triangle, right? You either use the cosine rule or the sine rule. And there's two situations where you have to use the cosine rule, right? So this is one of those situations. What's the second situation where you have to use the cosine rule? The first one is you're given the three sides. The second one is when you're given two sides and the included angle. You haven't enough information for the sine rule, so you have to use the cosine rule. So two sides, see this, and the angle between them. That's the cosine rule. So there's two cases where you have to use the cosine rule, right? The sine rule is easier, so you'll always go for the sine rule if you can, right? Okay, but the sine rule, you haven't enough information here to do the sine rule. So when you've two sides and the included angle, do you all know what I mean by when I say two sides and the included angle? Everyone knows what I'm talking about there, right? So let's call it, let's label. So I'll call this angle A, and I'll call this small a. I'll call this capital B, and I'll call this small b. I'll call this capital C, and I'll call this capital C, and I'll call over there small c.
What's the length of the
50 centimeters, 140 centimeters. Okay.
Is 140 feet?
Yeah, B is 140 centimeters. Okay, right, are we good? Right, so cosine rule, A squared equals B squared plus C squared minus 2BC cos A. So A squared is what I'm looking for, right? B squared is 140 squared plus C squared is 50 squared minus 2 times B is 50, or sorry, B is 140 and C is 50 times cos of A is 32. Now, there's no moving anything around here, right? You only have to move stuff around when you're looking for the angle. So there's no moving anything around here. Just type that exactly into the calculator as you see it, right? Okay, and so you get 140 squared add 50 squared minus 2 bracket 140 close bracket open bracket 50 close bracket times the cos of 32 equals, and we get 10227.3 ... Okay, I'm not finished. How do I, that's what A squared is. How do I find out what A is? Get a square root of your answer. So square root of the answer equals 101, and we'll round it up. They tell me in the nearest whole number, they say. So it's 101.13 ... Nearest whole number, that's 101, and it's all in centimeters. Is that okay? So that's just one with a story attached, right? Okay. And as I say, don't worry about the story. Cut to the chase. Get your triangle. Okay. Right. Now I'm going to do example 2. Is a mixture of the sine rule and the cosine rule, as in you don't know which to use. They don't tell you which to use, right? Okay. So can I go? Anyone? Okay. Right. Okay. So example 2. And just for reference, it's on page 549 and it's question 12. And basically they gave me 2 triangles. They tell me this is 110, this is 33, this is 23, this is 5, this is 4. So as you can see, there's 2 triangles here, isn't there? Okay, there's a triangle here, yeah, and there's a triangle here. Agreed? Which one do you work in first and why? Which one will I work in first? Or does it matter? You need 3 pieces of information. So do you have 3 pieces of information in both triangles? You actually do, don't you? You know, because you have 100 here in this triangle, you have 4, 5 and 110. That's 3 pieces of information, is it? Over in this one you have 23, 33 and 5, don't you? So in this case you actually have a choice. A lot of them you're kind of limited to 2 pieces of information. Okay? And the question is to find AB, so I'll just call that X, and find CD. CD is here. Find Y. So it's find X and Y. 1, the length of X, and 2, the length of Y. 2 straight lines either side just means the length of, right? Okay, so part 1, I'm just going to draw out the triangle that X is in. Okay, so this is 110, this is 5, this is 4, and I'm looking for X. Right, sine rule, cosine rule. Sine rule is way easier, so you would always use the sine rule if you can. But can I use the sine rule here? It has to be what? It has to be the cosine rule, because there's 2 conditions where it has to be the cosine rule. This is one of them, where you have 2 sides and the included angle. So if you try to use the sine rule, you wouldn't have enough information for it, okay? So I'll call this angle I know capital A. I'll call X small a, right? I'll call this capital B, and I'll call this small b, and I'll call this capital C, and I'll call this small c. Okay?
You don't actually label A, it does not matter what you label B or C.
No, doesn't matter. Right, not at all. Right, A squared equals B squared plus C squared minus 2BC cos A. So A squared is what I'm looking for. B is 5 squared. C is 4, so plus 4 squared minus 2 times 5 times 4 times cos of angle A, which is cos of 110 degrees. Okay, so there's no moving anything around because what I'm looking for is already on its own over here. So into the calculator with that. Okay, so you go 5 squared plus 4 squared minus 5 squared plus 4 squared minus that cos 110 equals right? And when you do all that, you'll get a squared is equal to 259.89. And in the, it says correct to 2 decimal places, so I'll have to go a bit further than that. So it's 289 there, right? I need to get the square root of that. So square root of the answer equals 16.12 rounded up to 2 places of decimals, which is what they asked me in the question. 16.12, and they didn't give me any units, so I don't need to give them any back. Okay, is that all right? So then part 2, I need to work on the other triangle. So I'm just going to draw out the other triangle there to for myself. I did something wrong. For which bit? When you do, yeah, I probably typed it in wrong, sorry. What did you get for, instead of 259 point that, you get 54.68, and then you get the square root of that? 7.39. So A is equal to 7.39. I probably just typed it in wrong. Okay, is that all right? Sorry about that. Okay, are we okay with that? So 7.39.
Are you rounding it? You have to round to 2 decimal places?
It says 2 decimal places, yeah, in this question. Okay, and they tell you, and if they don't tell you, go at least to 2, right? Okay, but they normally tell you, they normally don't leave it up to you. Okay, right? Okay, so now in part 2, I need to find y. Okay, so can I move it up? So I'm now working in the second triangle over here, which is 33, 23, and 5. Right, which rule am I using? Sine rule or cosine rule, and why? There's only 2 conditions where you use the cosine rule. That is, if you have 3 sides, I don't have 3 sides. Or if you have 2 sides and the included angle. Do I have 2 sides and the included angle? No, so I'm using the sine rule. Before I start, girls, straight away, I can get the third angle. I know they taught, I might need to, but I'm going to get the third angle. How am I going to get the third angle? 3 angles in a triangle add to 180. So I can add what I have. So 23 and 33 gives me 56. So 56 from 180 is 124. Okay, even if I go no further, I now have marks because it's a step in the right direction. Okay, just so you know, they throw marks at you in maths. Right? Okay, so let's label. So I'll call this capital A. This is Y. Okay, sorry. Small a, capital B, small b, capital C, small c. So I've already established I'm using the sine rule, is that right? So I go A over sine A, you haven't done it since before Christmas, so you've forgotten it, equals B over sine B, equals C over sine C. So I use 2. So I use a set I know, where I know the line and the angle, and the set I'm looking for. So which one am I going to, I know the, what do I know? I know the A's, I know the C's, don't I? I know the C's and I'm looking for the A's. Would you agree? I'm looking for small a, and I have a complete set in C's, in that I know the angle and I know the measure of the line. Is everyone with me? So I'm going to use A and C. So A over sine A equals C over sine C. Now it depends on how you label them. You might have called, so it depends on which ones I label, but in mine I'm using A and C. So small a is Y, that's what I'm looking for. Sine of the angle, capital A is 124. Equals C, which is 5 over sine of C. Sine of C is sine of 23. What do I do to solve the sine rule? You cross multiply first. Okay, do you all know cross multiply? Right, so top by bottom, so it's y multiplied by sine 123, or 23 even, equals 5 multiplied by sine 124. Do you all know what I've done there? Cross multiply. So top by bottom equals top by bottom. So y top by bottom, y multiplied by sine 23 equals top 5 multiplied by sine 124. Got it? Right, now I want y in its own, so it's stuck to sine 23, so that means I divide each side by sine 23. Divide this side by sine 23. They cancel. I'm left with y in its own, and I put that exactly as I see it into the calculator. Somebody might do it for me and round it up to 2 decimal places again, please.
It's giving me an error.
You have to close the bracket underneath. Do you know when you put in sine 23, it opens a
Yeah.
bracket. If you close that bracket, it'll for some reason you can not close the brackets when it's above the line, but when it's below the line they insist on you close the bracket. I don't get it, but
So I have the rest of
yeah, and it's still an error message.
10.61.
We'll say that again.
10.61.
10.61. Try again, Lucy. 10.61. Agree, everyone? Right. Okay, I might do another example, right, where we don't know which to use. Okay, so I'm going to go example 3. Did you get it? Am I okay to go? I'm okay. Example 3. And I'm going to do page 545. No, I won't. Yeah, okay. Page 545, number 10. That's just for reference. I'm going to give you what they... So again, there's 2 triangles in one. Right, this is 50. This is 9 centimeters. This is 80. So that's 50, 80, 9 centimeters. And they tell me this one over here is 6 centimeters. Right, and then part 1 is find the length of DC, so find x, so find the length of x. And part 2 is find the length of AB, A to B, I'll just call that y. So find the length of y. Is that okay? Right, so I have 2 triangles here. Right, none of them are right angles, so there's no SOHCAHTOA. Don't forget SOHCAHTOA for right angle triangles. But we know right angle triangle here. Right, before I start, what could I do? I use my geometry. We haven't done geometry yet, but you've done it in Junior Cert. I could find out the sides of this angle here, couldn't I? How? You'd add 50 and 80, wouldn't you? Would you? 50 and 80 will give me 130, wouldn't it? Take it away from 180, that would be 50. Agreed? I can fill in more, I can fill in another bit of information. You know these 2 angles here, they make a straight line, don't they? So if they make a straight line, they add to 180, don't they? So if that one's 50, this one's 130. Okay, so a bit of geometry before I start. Right, you all see where that came from? Here, this 50 comes from the 3 angles in a triangle add to 180. And this 130 comes from this angle and this angle make a straight line. So that means they add to 180 also. Is that okay? So which triangle will I work in? The one with the X or the one with the Y? The one with the X. Why will I work in the triangle with the X? Because I have 3 pieces of information. I actually have 4. But I can't work in the triangle with the Y because I only have 2 pieces of information in that triangle, don't I? Do I? Hang on now. Did they? Yeah, okay, so, right. So I can work, for part 1, I'm working in this triangle here on the right hand side. So this is 50, this is 50, this is 80, this is 9 centimeters. Girls, I don't have to do any sine rule or cosine rule or anything here. Why? Does anyone see anything with that triangle? It's what kind of a triangle? It's got 2 equal angles, so what does that mean? Yeah, it's an isosceles triangle, doesn't it? So if it's got 2 equal angles, it's got 2 equal sides, isn't it? And it's not the included, it's the, this is the other side that's equal, right? It's not the one between the 2 equal angles. Is that right? Okay, so I actually don't have to do the sine rule here. This is a bad example to pick, but anyway. So X is 9 centimeters. Would you agree? Yeah, it'll still end up at 9 centimeters. Yeah, it would. Right, but the thing is, right, you know, for part 2, I have to work in this triangle because I want to find Y. But how many pieces of information do I have in this triangle on the left? I've only got 2 pieces of information. Would you agree? So I need a third piece of information. So I can use this triangle to find out the length of that line there, can't I? Right, and then I'll be able to use that in the other triangle. Do you know what I mean? So will I just call that Z? And I'm going to find out Z. Right, so what will I use, the sine rule or the cosine rule to find out Z? You could use either. Which one's easier? Sine rule is easier. Right, well I think the sine rule is easier. Okay, you can actually use either because we have 2 lines and the included angle. Right, so you could use the cosine rule, but I'm going to use the sine rule. So this is capital A, small a, capital B, small b, capital C, small c. So then it's A over sine A equals B over sine B equals C over sine C. So you use the one you're looking for. So I'm looking for small a, aren't I? So I'm definitely using the A's. And you use the complete one. Complete one where I know the angle and the side. Will I use B or C? B. I actually know both again, don't I? So I have way too much information in this triangle. So I'm just going to use A's and B's, but I could use A's and C's. Okay, so A is Z. So Z over sine of A, which is sine of 80, equals B over sine B, which is 9 over sine 50. Right, sine rule, cross multiply. So cross multiply, you have Z multiply by sine 50 equals 9 multiplied by sine of 80. What I do now, divide by what? Divide by sine 50. So divide that side by sine 50 and divide this side by sine 50. They cancel, get Z in its own, and we'll give it to 2 places of decimals. They said correct to the nearest whole number for the final answer. So this is my final answer. So what have we got?
Is whole number?
Sorry?
Is it correct to the whole number?
2 places of decimals.
11.57.
11.57. Okay, that is not what they asked me for, okay? But that is something I have to get on the way to get what they're looking for, because I need to work on the triangle now on the left. Okay, so in the triangle on the left, I know this is 130. I know this is 6 centimeters. I've just figured out this is 11.57. Is that okay? And I need to find y. Sine rule or cosine rule? Cosine rule, because I have 2 sides in the included angle. Agreed? So I call this capital A, y is small a. I call this capital B, small b, capital C, small c. So I have a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cos a. I'm afraid I'm going for time. Yeah, I'm running out of time. So that's y squared is equal to 6 squared plus 11.57 squared minus 2 times 6 times 11.57 times the cos of, beside that, that's the cos of 130. Okay, into the calculator with that, press equals, and then get the square root of your answer, okay, to find out what y is. Okay, so homework is going to be page 548. I'm not finishing it because it's just calculator work. You can finish it there and write it in. So page 548 to 549, let's do 11, 13, 14 and 15. So 11, 13, 14 and 15. Okay, and they're a mixture of sine and cosine, so you have to figure it out which one.